Lake Neusiedl. This unique steppe lake is the home of rare animals, but is also an El Dorado for water sports fans and a tourist attraction. Wind and water characterize this Pannonian landscape, which has been declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. There are few places in Europe that are so beautiful and full of surprises. Lake Neusiedl, colloquially called the Ocean of the Viennese. The 300 square kilometer body of water is located at the edge of the Pannonian lowlands. Water and wind form a unity here. A gigantic belt of reeds encircles the lake. Here there are 300 days of sun annually, and surfers are here nearly year-round. Sailboats, pedal boats, rowboats. At weekends, one sees more people on the lake than aquatic birds because they have hidden themselves in the reeds. The Meyer crows are loud birds. Where they are found, their hue and cry can't be missed, especially when they are defending their breeding grounds. They build their nests floating on or very close to the water. Such brood colonies can contain up to 1,000 birds. The oviposition is synchronized. The young will all hatch simultaneously with a difference of only a few days. In the south is the invisible border with Hungary, right through the middle of the lake. The national park Lake Neusiedl was created there in the Szévhenkel in 1993. It merges seamlessly into a Hungarian nature reserve. Puszta, that means steppe. If it isn't grazed, it will become overgrown with bushes. This is why white donkeys aren't allowed to graze here. This old race of domesticated animal is a breed from the time of the monarchy. It has been resettled here and has multiplied as a living gene bank. The cooperation of Austrian and Hungarian zoologists rescued this endangered species from extinction. Yet another Puszta breed was saved from its downfall. Hungarian grey cattle. These animals need lots of space and the open sky above their heads. Grey cattle are easy to please and live outdoors throughout the year, watched by the bull. The herd radiates an unbelievable peace and quiet. They love their freedom. The cows birth their calves without help. The young animals also have to learn to stand on their own 4 feet quickly. During the monarchy, the untiring grey cattle were driven from Hungary to the Spanish cattle markets. In order to maintain control over the brush, and thus also to secure the breeding grounds of the birds, horses also graze south of Ilmitz. These are very special animals. Przewalski horses are the last wild horses to have survived to the present day. There are around 2,000 specimens worldwide, most of them living in zoos. Attempts are being made at various places in the world to reintroduce them to the wild again. At Lake Neusiedl, they live under the protection of the national park. At the edge of the reeds, a bird patrols the water with mowing movements. It is a common spoonbill. It has just caught a fish. And on it goes. With its large bill, the spoonbill searches for snails, crayfish and tadpoles at the bottom of the lake. The mud also contains Pannonian medicinal chalk, which is said to be very healthy. Spoonbills belong to the ibis family and live together in large groups. In autumn, they fly back to Africa. The common tree frog lives deep within the reeds, perfectly camouflaged by its green skin color. There is more than enough food here. Billions of insects populate the reeds. Without frogs and birds, the mosquitoes would be a much worse plague than they already are. They multiply extremely rapidly. A single female mosquito can lay millions of billions of eggs, which means myriads of mosquitoes in numbers we can't even imagine. Reeds are also a raw material. Lake Neusiedl has the second largest stocks of reeds in Europe. The harvesting of reeds used to be an important economic branch. Even today, 10 to 15% of the reed belt is harvested each year and used, for example, for roofing. Reeds contain silicic acid, which is especially weather-resistant. However, there are even fewer people who use the reeds for agricultural purposes. In the national park, it is first harvested when the birds are no longer brooding. A grey heron strides majestically through the water, not far from a great white egret, not to mention a little egret. Herons and egrets need wetlands like reed belts or swamps. Because these are becoming even harder to find, their species is endangered in Austria. These birds also used to be hunted for their beautiful feathers. The water frog would do well not to puff himself up so much, because he doesn't just attract females that way. His call is referred to as purring. The great white egret is keeping a very close eye on the frog. Now he's got him and swallowed him. The small town of Rust lies on the western shore of Lake Neusiedl. Merchants and vintners have lived here since the Middle Ages. The historic city centre is a UNESCO World Cultural Heritage Site. However, Rust is even more famous for its roofs than for its wines. The stork nests crown many of the numerous chimneys of the historic buildings. The birds come from their African winter quarters each spring. Clapping their bills is how they communicate with their partners. Because wetlands are growing increasingly rare, storks concentrate in individual regions and have grown accustomed to the proximity of humans. On Lake Neusiedl, they still find enough frogs, earthworms and insects to feed their young. Sometimes they even find old trees here, in which they can nest. Many human cultures consider the stork to be a kind of good luck charm. The national park Further Tor joins on the Hungarian side of the lake, where there are small deciduous forests. The green woodpecker has built its nest in a tree hole and must now feed its hungry young. It is on the go the whole day, sometimes for as much as 18 hours. It may live in the tree, but it is not one of the woodpeckers that look for beetles under the bark. It specializes in ants that live on the ground. This green woodpecker is examining an abandoned cavity, while its young are already impatiently sticking their heads out of their own. Hunger. The little ones need to grow to adulthood and fledge in only 4 weeks. The Eurasian curlew has come to Lake Neusiedl to brood. It is related to the snipe. During the mating season, the male dances around its bride, spreads its wings and stretches its tail upwards. The female is courted intensively. The groom even has to offer it various nest depressions and line them. The numbers of the retiring bird are dropping dramatically in Europe, in correspondence with the disappearance of the wetlands. The Eurasian curlew flies to the northern European coasts in the winter. The great crested grebe is a bird whose life is changing with the changing climate. With each extra degree, it moves its breeding grounds further northwards. It still nests on Lake Neusiedl. It carries its young on its back for the first few days. Because the great crested grebe primarily feeds on fish, it has often been hunted by humans. In the National Park Seewinkel, it can still build its nests undisturbed. The artistic formations float on the water, or they are anchored to plants at the edge of the silted-up zones. One parent watches over the young, while the other searches for food. In summer, the avocet exchanges the ocean for Lake Neusiedl. Because the lake is slowly silting up, the water is becoming increasingly saline and is similar to the brackish water of the coasts. More than 500 avocets come to the lake to brood each year and obviously feel quite at home here. The little ringed plover is on foot. It hardly weighs more than 30 or 40 grams and dances nimbly over the sand and mud of the shore region on the hunt for worms, spiders and larvae. The habitat of this bird is shrinking due to climate change. Dryness, but also flooding, is increasing. In autumn, it flies to North Africa to overwinter. Due to the mild climate, not only birds but also people come to Lake Neusiedl. Coach tours through the lowlands are a popular tourist attraction. With the horse-drawn carriage, visitors can also reach remote locations around the lake and experience nature up very close. Too close, the ground squirrel finds. It flees from the visitors back into its den. Ground squirrels are squirrels that only thrive in dry, sandy plains and which are therefore becoming increasingly rare in Europe. They live on green vegetation, blossoms and seeds, but also eat insects and worms. They can sense the vibrations caused by the horse hooves in their dens. They hide until the coast is clear again. A pair of penduline tits has perfected their nest while floating in the air. The male has courted its partner with its building ability. When she is satisfied with the cavity, she will help with the rest of the work with plant wool, sticky seeds and spider webs. The two have carefully sewn the felt together using fibers from the nearby reeds. There is a lot of activity in the nest. The pouch is really starting to swing. However, the construction holds. The little ones hatch at a considerable height and will also hardly touch the ground as adults. They stay in the crowns of bushes and trees and live there on insects, spiders and seeds. They drink the water caught by the leaves. The black-winged stilt is a shifty character and often changes its place of residence. However, it remains true to Lake Neusiedl. There are up to 400 brooding pairs in the Pannonian Plain. The wood sandpiper is only passing through. The black-winged stilt has much longer legs and can also wade through deeper water. This is why they don't get in each other's way in the search for food. Like with a dagger, the waders spear their prey with their pointy bills, worms for example. Following the short feeding break, the black-winged stilt returns to its nest. Another lone bird wanders the endless shore areas of the lake. The common redshank is well camouflaged by its mottled dress and can hardly be distinguished from the vegetation. Only its red legs are conspicuous. Lake Neusiedl is a leisure and holiday paradise in summer. Thousands of tourists come here for a day or more to relax, to engage in water sports or to just have fun. The lake is an average of 23 degrees in July or August. More than 30 different species of fish live in Lake Neusiedl. For example, carp and pike. The predaceous fish like to lurk in the reed undergrowth on the bottom, waiting for prey. The eel used to be put out for the fisheries economy. However, because it is not an indigenous species, it should be fished dry over time and eaten up. Summer on Lake Neusiedl. The grey-lag goose has no particular fear of tourists. Where there are tourists, there might also be snacks. The geese remain here over the winter more often and no longer fly south. The climate is also getting warmer in Austria. The great reed warbler comes from very far away, from southern Africa. This long-distance migratory bird is an acrobat in the swaying reeds. It marks its territory with its calls. The Savi's warbler comes to Austria from the African rainforest. In the tangle of the reeds, it is hardly recognizable. Only its characteristic calls betray it. Another member of its species responds from a distance. In the vicinity of Lake Neusiedl, there are around 40 ponds, small, shallow lakes, which have no inlet and dry up in the heat. Herds of cattle have been part of the steppe landscape for centuries. The draw well is a reminder that the region used to belong to Hungary. The saline ponds have a very special flora and fauna, similar to that found at the ocean. However, when the ponds contain a lot of water, they are also visited by many other animals looking to refresh themselves. White salt crystals remain behind when the water evaporates in the heat of the sun. They give the soil a light color. When a pond dries out like this, the muddy bottom tears in large scales. Only a few plants and animals can thrive in this inhospitable salt flat. For example, the very rare moor frog. Not only moors, but also the ponds are its wet, dry terrain. Insects like this dragonfly don't live very long. One of their enemies is the wolf spider, which can move lightning fast on the ground. Instead of spinning a web, it crouches immobile on the ground. But the too large and the full small eyes register every movement. It paralyzes prey with the poison in its claws. This female has laid several hundred eggs in a cocoon, which she produced herself with glue from her glands. When the time is ripe, she will help the little spiders hatch by biting open the packaging of her nest. The little ones immediately crawl onto the back of their mother and are protected and carried around by her for a time. A tarantula bite isn't dangerous for humans, only very painful. Bulrushes and sedges are robust grasses, of which there are many different types. These undemanding plants produce flowers, fruits and seeds every year and cover the barren ground with their bushy stalks. are persistent conquerors. When the ponds dry out, they quickly spread there where water was most recently. A sea of loosestrife, one of the many blossoming plants of the lowlands, lights up the edge of a pasture. Each of the stalks bears hundreds of flowers, which provide many insects with a source of food. Burgenland, land of fortresses, doesn't have its name by chance. This was once the frontier of the Occident. Lockenhaus Castle at the south end of Lake Neusiedl is said to have been an outpost of the mysterious Templars, a monastic order of knights. Today, a part of the medieval castle is a romantic hotel. Gusing Castle in southern Burgenland was expanded as a massive defense fortress for defense against the Mongols and the Turks. Such historic places are popular excursion destinations. There is enough wind in the Saewinkel. It has been used as a source of energy for centuries. The windmill at Podersdorf is already 160 years old and is protected as a monument. The roof dome can be rotated and aligns the blades with the wind. When it grows dark in the Saewinkel, the hour of a silent hunter has come. During the day, it remains concealed in the underbrush of the high grass. The combination of dense reeds and the broad plain is ideal for the short-eared owl. It has excellent sight and hearing and targets its prey from the air. It most often attacks voles. It can look behind itself without turning around. The deer come to the pastures to graze at sunset. Because they no longer have any natural enemies, they must also be killed in the national park at certain times. Birds, frogs and crickets commence with a loud concert in the twilight. 3 long-eared owls sit on a solitary tree in the Saewinkel. These are young animals, and although they are already fledged when they hatch and are already quite large, they still seem quite clumsy. They wait for the protection of the night before they dare to leave the tree. The great bustards are very special birds and are so retiring that one can normally only recognize them as points on the horizon. One of the last territories of this largest cursorial bird in Europe is found at Lake Neusiedl. They were almost exterminated by humans, not least for their meat. The birds weigh up to 16 kilos and can live for up to 20 years. There are only very few regions remaining in Europe where this proud courtship dance can take place. This male is looking to impress. It puffs up its brilliant red crop and spreads its plumage. The females come closer. But then they hear a noise and are gone. An impressive sight when the giants effortlessly rise into the air. They belong to the crane family. The bustards have accompanied humans since primeval times. Illustrations of them have been found in prehistoric caves. However, because they also eat crops, they were viewed as competitors with humans for food. They were even considered a plague in the 18th century. The lapwing fears for the eggs in its nest and bravely attacks the much larger birds. Meanwhile, the courtship continues at the edge of the field. The hen is interested. But a competitor then appears and wants to drive away the cock. These struggles for territory are very intense. Feathers fly. The beak of the loser is hacked bloody. The great bustards can only survive in national parks or in other specially protected areas. In 1995, there were only 60 specimens in all of Austria. In cooperation with Hungary, a transnational protection program was initiated. Several agricultural areas were decommissioned, while bustard-friendly food was planted in other areas. Perhaps this species, threatened with extinction, can be saved in this way. Another bird that doesn't want to be seen is sneaking through the reeds. The nocturnal bittern is rarely observed by day. When it senses danger, it extends its head straight upwards and acts as if it weren't a bird at all, but rather a kind of pole. These birds of the heron family eat fish, birds, and insects. They also steal eggs when they find nests. When autumn approaches, the birds gather to fly together to their winter quarters. The ruff will fly to West Africa, many thousands of kilometers away. It is very busy searching for food in order to tank up energy for the journey. The retreat of the wetlands and climate change will halve its habitat in this century. The meters-high labyrinth of reeds around the sea is its own universe. The night heron searches for prey at night. It doesn't want to violate the turf of other birds. The loner takes pains to not frighten away the fish it wants to catch. Patience is key here. This type of hunting is not for nervous birds. Herons can swim, but not especially well. He still has traction and walks on the ground. He's done it. One bird is so conspicuous that it has even become a kind of trademark of Austrian waters, the kingfisher. At the edge of the shore, it watches the water and lunges at small fish. It can then eat the fish at its lookout perch. Burgenland is also famous for one more thing: its wine. The Romans brought wine to this region, and the many days of sun refine the grapes. Very special attention has been paid to quality here since the mid-1990s. In the vicinity of the lake, there are countless wine villages where internationally renowned wines are cultivated. For example, Blaufränkisch or Weißburgunder, Pinot Blanc. A third of Austrian wine is cultivated here. The grape harvest is the highlight of a long year of nourishing and cherishing. It is fascinating how little this millennia-old craft of wine pressing has changed. Manual labor still plays a decisive role. The international competition is great. Only special locations and notes can compete with international giant wine-growing regions. Only quality can prevail. Tourism is an important venue for sales. Festivals take place in the cellar streets of the wine villages during the harvest. However, the vintners have no time to celebrate. Now the task at hand is to refine the grape juice by pressing. Admittedly, the picturesque cellar alleys are still only seldom used for the production of wine. The cellars originate from the 19th century. Many of them have been renovated and are now taverns selling homegrown wine. The wine village of Mürbisch is known for its alley plazas. When the doors are open, guests are invited to visit the vintners and taste their products. The sunflowers are as much a part of the Burgenland landscape as the vineyards and the small chapels at the side of the road. Extensive cycling paths link the villages of southern Burgenland. They lead over canals and through picturesque alleys. New vineyards appear again and again to the right and the left. The southern climate produces especially sweet and vitamin-packed fruits. More than 250 agriculturalists occupy themselves with the cultivation of apples alone. The scattered fruit trees in the meadows are harvested by hand. They are also not treated with synthetic media. Cultivation free of poisons protects not only people, but also insects and birds. The agriculturalists of the region originally opposed the national park Lake Neusiedl. In the meantime, they have recognized that nearly natural cultivation not only protects the region, it also presents special economic chances. The fruits selected by hand bring higher earnings. On the Hungarian side of the lake, the Hanzag, a moor has formed as the result of the slow silting up of the Lake District. The Austrian part of the area is called Vasen. The Lake District, which was almost twice the size 250 years ago, is at its deepest here. This resulted in a low moor with high humidity. The Zickental moor ox is a robust race of cattle. In the moor meadows, it eats herbs and plants for at least 2 years before it is butchered. That's what makes its meat so tasty. The regional restaurants offer the meat as a special delicacy. Another type of cattle, which had already been domesticated thousands of years ago, feels at home where it's really swampy. The water buffalo is used as a working and pack animal in Asia. Keeping it in Central Europe has once again become fashionable in recent years. This unique landscape is maintained through the grazing of the moor. Buffalo milk has twice as much fat as cow's milk and is especially rich in calcium and vitamin A. Mozzarella, for example, can be made from it. Lake Neusiedl changes its character entirely in winter. Ice crystals cover the grass and large parts of the lake freeze over. Nature seems to stand still. The waves have frozen into ice and snow. The great bustards stay here over the winter. However, finding food is now a challenge. Predatory birds such as the red kite now have an open view of their prey in the stark landscape. Almost no one knows him today, but in earlier centuries, he even lived in major cities like London and ate the garbage there. It lives on songbirds, mice and fish. In winter, it often finds animals that have succumbed to the cold. Now it is time to harvest the reeds because most of the birds have gone and the ice protects the roots of the reeds. It is difficult work, which is here still carried out by hand. This is why there are only 3 reed cutters left on Lake Neusiedl. The largest part of the harvest is exported. Organic construction methods like to make use of natural material. The high sky above Lake Neusiedl lends life a feeling of freedom. In winter, it is no longer the birds that populate the lake, but instead swarms of people enjoy this freedom. Such an ice glider can reach speeds of up to 90 kilometers per hour. And you can't fall into the water while surfing. The area around Lake Neusiedl is a wonderful landscape, unique in Europe and of intercontinental importance, as a resting place for birds in the middle of the major migration routes. Thanks to the Transborder National Park, this oasis can be maintained.